Hey everyone, today it's time for patch 6.2, and as you know, with that come the official patch notes, and with the official patch notes also come the job balance changes. Now, starting from this patch, they're also going to have further explanations as to why they made these changes. So I've also opened up this other tab right here that gives us an overview as to why these changes happened, but I'll just be going over them first, kind of talk about my thoughts on them, because for some of them I do have some things to say about it. So let's just jump right into it. Tank roll actions. Provoke is now going to be generating increased enmity or aggro, however you want to call it. Just going to make tank swapping even easier than it already is. I think the main reason why they might do this is because of the Dragonsong Surprise Ultimate in the final phase. You need to provoke a lot and you have to be like playing with your tank stances and such. Of course, if you're an ultimate level raider, you can probably do this. It is just going to make it so that if maybe like your co-tank still has their tank stance on and they generate too much enmity, it's not going to be a problem now. Or if they like don't have Shirk up, this should make it easier to provoke. It's kind of what I'm thinking about. I don't really think this needed to be changed, but it's just going to make tanking a bit easier. As for Paladin, Holy Spirit potency buff, and then the entire Blade combo is also getting potency buffs. I believe Paladin was still one of the weaker tanks, so I don't mind them seeing some potency boosts. I remember also a lot of complaints about Paladin in Dragonsong Surprise, that it just wasn't strong enough, so seeing them have some potency buffs is kinda nice. Warrior, Maim potency increased, Storm's Path, Storm's Eye potency increases as well, very tiny ones, but potency buffs nevertheless, and then Shake It Off is now going to be applied more quickly, which is kind of nice. So you just have that mitigation up a lot easier if you do end up pressing it a bit late. Potency buffs, I was honestly not expecting for Warrior. Yes, I know it's like together with Paladin one of the weaker tanks in terms of their DPS, but Warrior is going to be indirectly buffed because of the crit direct hit changes. For those that don't know, actions that have guaranteed crits or direct hits or both are now going to be benefiting from crit and direct hit buffs. When it comes down to crit buffs, they're going to just generate a damage buff for you. When it comes down to direct hit buffs, they're going to be giving you a damage increase based on your direct hit values. So Warrior is just going to be seeing a damage increase from that. So I'm kind of surprised to also see damage buffs alongside that. Wasn't really expecting that, but as a Warrior player myself, I will welcome them, because this is going to make Warrior a whole lot stronger, and it's also tiny potency buffs outside of their burst window, so I don't think it's going to have like a huge effect on the job. Dark Knight, Abyssal Drain potency has been increased by 90, that's actually quite substantial, and Living Shadow effect duration has been reduced by 4 seconds, so small nerf there. Simulacra will now always attack the first target the player attacks after it's summoned. Will no longer attack with Quietus, so small AoE nerf I guess. Shadowbringer's potency has been increased, and potency of all Simulacrum actions other than Shadowbringers have been increased from 300 to 350. So I guess this is to make up for like the duration loss. We'll probably just make it easier to use during burst windows, so that all of the burst that the Shadow is giving you is going to be fitting underneath burst buffs, because most of them last like 15 to 20 seconds now, I think. So this should just make it more ease of use, I guess you could say. Gunbreaker, lots of changes. Brutal Shell, potency buff. Solid Barrel, potency buff. I wasn't really expecting potency buffs for Gunbreaker, to be honest. Then Jugular Rip, Abdomen Tear, Eye Gouge, all getting an increase in range, and the same thing goes for Hypervelocity. So those are all of the continuation actions, and they're getting a range buff now. I think this is kind of big, because this could potentially make it easier for you to reposition bosses. So one of the biggest like problems that Gunbreaker has, I guess, when it comes down to boss positioning, is that whenever you have to do a continuation action, because you have so many off-global cooldowns, it could often make it difficult for you to reposition bosses, because you have to press so many off-global cooldowns, and you need to be close to the boss when you do so. So this could potentially make that better. Of course, we'd have to test it out in game, but this does sound pretty good. Faded Circle, potency buff as well. Bloodfest recast time increased from 90 to 120 seconds. Blasting Zone potency increase, and Double Down reduction in potency after the first target has been changed from 20% to 15%. So that's a Double Down AoE buff. Now, I guess all of these potency buffs, or well, the small potency buffs that we got, are to alleviate the damage nerf that we're taking from Bloodfest now becoming 2 minutes. So it kind of makes sense there. Bloodfest becoming 2 minutes. So for those that don't play Gunbreaker, the class is very weird to play right now, because it doesn't have a looping rotation like pretty much every other job in the game. and that is because of the change from going from 2 cartridges in Shadowbringers to going to 3 cartridges in Endwalker, and because of that we don't have a looping rotation anymore. Now, making this 2 minutes could potentially fix that problem, so I'd have to test it out in game. This does make me kind of excited because Gunbreaker is my favorite job, and yeah, I just kind of want to try this out. So possibly fixed rotation, possibly fixed dragging bosses around, so kind of cool. Interested to see how this is actually going to play out. This is probably the first thing I'm gonna try out when the game does go live. Then Dragoon jump action timer, or action will no longer be replaced with Mirage dive while under the effect of dive ready. Same thing for high jump when it upgrades into that. And then of course you do need to set Mirage dive onto your hotbar again. Recast timer of jump and high jump no longer affect the execution of Mirage dive. I like this a lot. So when they changed Dragoon, they've made it so that your jumps are a whole lot faster now. And because I often press my buttons like 2, maybe 3 times as I want to press the action, doing that with jump would often make it so that I jump and immediately use Mirage dive right after, because they just made the animations so fast now. Which I thought was really annoying, because it would make it so that I use Mirage dive when I don't want to use it. This is just going to make it so that that problem does not exist anymore. So I do like this change. Samurai, Tenka Goken, potency increased, Hisatsu Q10, potency increased, Guren, potency reduction nerfed, so it's going to make it stronger in AoE scenarios, and then Kaishi Goken, potency increased as well. So small potency buffs, but not too much. Reaper, Slice, Waxing Slice, Inferno Slice, potency increases, but again this is like not on their burst buffs. So outside of burst, you're going to be doing a tiny bit more damage now. Machinist, this is one I've been looking forward to because this needed some stuff. Rook, I'm gonna ignore Rook because that is the old turret, of course. Automaton Queen is where it's at. Automaton Queen will now always attack the first target player attacks after it's summoned, so kind of like the Dark Knight Simulacrum. Duration is no longer increased to a maximum of 20 seconds and is now fixed at 12. Potency of the Automaton Queen actions now increases as battery gauge exceeds required cost of deployment. So this is going to add some consistency to your Queen summons, I guess, because it's always going to be the same duration, so you want to summon it when you need it rather than thinking in advance like how long is my turret going to stay in terms of like when it's going to be inside of burst buffs and that kind of stuff. And it'll do bonus damage like when you do summon it, depending on how much excess gauge that you have. Same thing goes for Roller Dash and Arm Punch. Like the potency of that is just going up depending on how much gauge that you have over the minimum. Is this going to fix Machinist? Honestly, I don't know. Like Machinist is really weak right now. Other jobs are getting potency buffs. Machinist probably isn't. I'm not quite sure like how much this is going to be affecting their damage, because sure, we're getting potency buffs, but it's also on a shorter summon duration now, so I'm not quite sure if this is like a DPS buff or not, but we'll have to see it play out in game, I guess. Also, the direct hit changes are kind of important for Machinists because Reassemble exists, and that means that you can now get like 2 very thick crits inside of like a burst window. But honestly, I'm not all that optimistic about it. Machinist needed some love, it didn't get it yet again, but we'll see how much this like actually affects the job, I guess. When people do get the ability to play around with it and when ACT gets updated and such. White Mage, Liturgy of the Bell, effect duration has been increased from 15 to 20 seconds, so it's a nice like usability increase, I guess. And for like long mechanics, this could also be kind of a buff, because you now get the stronger heal from the stack being eaten instead of you having to like explode the Lily Bell yourself. Scholar, Embrace, Seraphic Veil, and Fey Union no longer generate enmity. This is not gonna change anything outside of like dungeons, I guess you could say. Astrologian, redraw card Drown will never be the same Astro sign as the cards presently held. This is the thing that you need, these Astro signs. These are the things that you need for your Astro Dine. So the thing that wants you to have 3 different signs, this is going to help with that. So you can guarantee 3 seals more easily. Minor Arcana action now changes into the Drown Arcanum skill. So this is also going to just make it so that you can save 1 button on your hotbar. I was expecting like bigger Astrologian changes, like for example 2 charges on Lightspeed, but I guess not. Still not going to play Astrologian because it's just way too busy right now. And then last but not least we have Sage. Cardia no longer generates enmity, so same thing as with Scholar. And then Holos, the additional effect erects a magic barrier which nullifies damage equaling to an amount of HP restored, has been added with a duration of 30 seconds. I actually quite like this, because my current problem with Holos was that it's a heal and also damage reduction. So if you want to use it for healing, you're losing out on the damage reduction aspect. If you want to use it for mitigation, you're most likely losing out on the healing that was attached to the skill. If they now add a shield to it, it actually makes it so that like when you do use it for mitigation, you're not like feeling like you wasted the heal because you still get the shield out of it. So I actually really like this change. Then new trait has been added for Reaper, Deathsight Mastery 2 increases the potency, so that's probably what we saw above as well. And then the following action has been removed, Crown Play, which is of course because like Lord and Lady, like drawing the Minor Arcanum, now turns into the Crown Play button, so we don't need that extra one again. So let's read over why they decided to make these adjustments. So for jobs in the tank role, action potencies has been adjusted to improve balance between them. Number of minor adjustments have also been made. These include, but are not limited to, changes to enmity generation, effect duration, and the range of actions, as well as the functionality of actions that replace others upon executions. So, tank. The adjustment to tank role jobs were made to help ensure tanks can safely maintain enmity when tank swapping in any given encounter. I guess it's just to make it easier when the other co-tank does not have Shirk or something like that. Maybe potentially makes it so that tank swaps will happen more frequently in our new Savage tier, who knows? One can dream, but I don't really think that's going to be the case. Paladin, potency of several actions has been increased to keep in line with other tank jobs, as this job has difficulty outputting high levels of burst damage. We chose to raise its damage floor by adjusting action potency. It's true, Paladin doesn't really have a burst window per se, like you have a very long burst, I guess you could say, with like Fight or Flight and then Requiescat. So they didn't really have like a 10-second burst window or something like a Dark Knight Warrior or a Gunbreaker. So I do kind of like this change. Warrior, potency of warrior actions have been increased. In contrast to Paladin, Warrior excels at dealing burst damage, which is why we chose to focus on increasing the potency of their basic combo rather than focusing on any single action. Also, if they were to increase the like burst potency damages, Warrior would get buffed even more, because again the direct hit crit changes. Dark Knight, when engaging multiple enemies, the simulacrum was subject to selecting undesired targets, which is why we have adjusted its behavior to ensure players can designate a specific target. Duration has also been reduced slightly to better suit situations where burst damage is necessary. In accordance with this change, the action Quietus was removed from its rotation and the potency of its remaining actions was increased. Oh, I see. So they didn't just remove Quietus from it because they didn't want it in there anymore. It was just to like shorten the summon duration. Instead of like speeding up the actions that it does. Kind of smart idea, I guess you could say. Do kind of like that it's now going to be easier to fit your entire simulacrum into burst windows. Should make it easier to play for like new Dark Knight players and such. For like existing good Dark Knight players, this shouldn't really change too much. Gunbreaker. Number of adjustments were made to improve overall playability. Change to Recast Timer of Bloodfest was to ensure Gunbreaker can line up their abilities with the burst phase of other jobs. Simply increasing the recast timer of this one action would weaken the job, however, so the potency of several other actions was increased. So kind of like what I thought was going to be happening there. And we also increased the range of actions that can be executed after continuations so that players can more easily position themselves when using them. Again, really interested in Gunbreaker to see how this will actually play out. Definitely going to be trying out this job immediately when the patch goes live, because I am really curious to see if this fixes the rotation, yes or no, and how far we can actually be when we use our continuation actions. Dragoon, based on player feedback, we have changed Mirage Dive so it no longer overrides jump or high jump on the hotbar. Okay, so that's just like from player feedback, I guess. Because Samurai's area of effect damage was insufficient in duties over level 60, potency of such attacks has been increased. I think for Samurai, like this is literally only AoE buffs, right? Tenka Goken is the Tusen AI Jutsu, Kyuten, Guren, also AoE. Yeah, this is literally just AoE buffs. Kind of forgot the names of all the abilities, but I think that's okay. That's fine by me. Reaper, potency of Reaper actions has been increased to keep in line with other melee DPS jobs, because Reaper deals significant burst damage. Adjustments were focused on basic combos, so exactly the same as Warrior basically. Machinist, when engaging multiple enemies, Automaton Queen was subject to selecting undesirable targets, so same as with Dark Knight. Also has been given a fixed duration, making it better suited to situations where burst damage is necessary. To compensate for the change to duration, potency has been adjusted. White Mage, duration of Lilybell has been adjusted to improve upon changes made in 6.1, which allowed players to choose when its additional healing effect is triggered. Just going to make Lilybell stronger, don't mind that at all. Scholar removed enmity generation to allow scholars to more easily manage their enmity in a given encounter. This honestly wasn't needed unless you have a tank that starts bitching at you in a dungeon because your fairy is regening them while they're pulling mobs. Literally the only reason why this is needed. Well, it's not really needed, but that's probably the reason behind it. Based on player feedback, Minor Arcana will now change into Drawn Arcanum rather than the action Crown play. The effect duration of redraw has been adjusted, making it easier to acquire Astro Signs. So that does mean I kind of want to check that out because that was not in the patch notes. And then Sage, a barrier effect was added to Hollows to both increase the amount of barrier protection that can be granted at any given time and improve the overall utility for mitigating damage. Removal of enmity, blah blah blah. Yeah, I really like this change to Hollows. I am quickly going to see what they did with Redraw though. Redraw, ability instant. Does not have a recast timer anymore. Can only be executed while under the effect of clarifying draw. So if I go to draw, draws an Arcanum, triggers using play. Additional effect grants clarifying draw, allowing the execution of redraw twice. So redraw does not have like its own cooldown anymore. You can just use 2 redraws now for every card that you draw. So kind of nice, I guess, like, because this makes it so that you can like draw the card that you want or play the cards that you want a little bit easier. Might make it so that you're redrawing more often now because you have like 2 charges per card that you get. But this doesn't really like fix the problems that I personally had with Astrologian. Like, we need 2 charges on Lightspeed, please. Like, if anything, please give us that. But yeah, those are all of the changes. Overall, happy with the changes. Machinist, please save this job. If anything, and then I still hope for some Astrologian changes as well, but I guess they already said they were going to change Astrologian in the next expansion quite significantly again. But yeah, I guess we'll just see for that. Overall, the classes I'm most hyped for, definitely Gunbreaker. This one excites me a lot. Outside of that, some decent buffs, I guess, to most classes. No nerfs, so that's always nice. But yeah, I guess we'll see how everything plays out when people do get around to getting ACT up to date, and then also testing it out a little bit in actual content. But that's gonna do it for me. I might do like a follow-up video on Gunbreaker to kind of go over the new rotation or something like that. We'll see if I do have time for that, because this week is going to be a very busy week when it comes down to games coming out and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me. So I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my patrons for their support, and I'll see you in the next one.